My sister emptied my mother's emergency account while my mom lay in a hospital bed, barely able to lift her left hand. Then she looked me in the face and said, "Mom wanted me to have it." The heart monitor kept beeping like nothing in the world had changed. The fluorescent lights washed everything the same pale color, and my plastic visitor badge kept clicking against my keys when my hand started to shake. I stared at the balance on my phone until the screen dimmed, and my thumb just stopped. What still makes my stomach tighten isn't only that it happened. It's how carefully it was done, like someone planned it while the rest of us were busy praying. Let me back up. I was in my early 40s, married to Tom, and we had one teenage daughter who acted allergic to family time but still wanted me on call for every crisis. I worked as a freelance graphic designer, which meant my office was a corner of the dining room and my income depended on me being calm even when I wasn't. 18 months before this, my mom, Patricia, had a major stroke. She survived, but it stole pieces of her independence. Walking became slow and uncertain. Speaking became a puzzle. Some days she could get a full sentence out. Other days she'd blink hard, point, and look at me like, "Please just understand." Caregiving didn't arrive with a banner. It crept in. First it was rides to appointments. Then it was medication organizers. Then it was me learning the difference between a tired sigh and a pain sigh. It was also me becoming the person who knew passwords, insurance portals, pharmacy refills, and which doctor needed to be called twice to call back once. My younger sister, Vanessa, was the kind of person who made starting a business sound like a lifestyle instead of a plan. She used to work a corporate job, then quit and started talking in vague circles about a boutique concept and investment opportunities. She lived well anyway, and no one asked too many questions about how. In our family, Vanessa was always the one people excused. She was finding herself. She was taking a leap. She was too creative for regular life. I was the dependable one. The one who would show up. That family dynamic had been practiced for years. Like the time I asked our brother, Eric, if he could take Mom to physical therapy so I could meet a client in person. He didn't even ask what my meeting was. He just said, "I can't. I've got a thing." And that was that. Or the way Vanessa would show up with a fancy drink, kiss Mom's forehead, say something pretty like, "You're so strong, Mama," and leave before the home nurse arrived, so she wouldn't be in the room when the work started. The weird part is, there were signs I ignored because I didn't want to be paranoid. Once, a nurse called me after a visit and said, "Carefully, your sister asked a lot of questions today. Not about exercises or safety, about paperwork." She didn't sound accusatory. She sounded uneasy. I brushed it off. I told myself Vanessa was just trying to help in her own way. Then Mom had a second stroke. Smaller, they said, but it threw her right back into the hospital and made her speech worse again. The day after it happened, she couldn't form full words, just sounds and half-syllables. Her right hand, her write-it-down hand, was weak. She looked trapped inside her own body. 3 days into that hospital stay, I stepped into the hallway to take a call, then checked Mom's accounts on my phone out of habit. Caregiving turns you into an unpaid administrator. Bills still come. Insurance still wants forms. Life doesn't pause just because you're scared. Mom had a few accounts, but there was one I rarely touched, a joint checking account she'd opened years ago with Vanessa for emergencies. Mom had explained it like it was smart. A backup. Something that would keep her safe if anything ever happened. I clicked into it expecting to see it sitting there untouched. Instead, the balance was 0. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I refreshed. Same. I logged out and back in, like that could undo reality. Then I saw the transaction list, multiple cash withdrawals, spaced out across days, each one just under a number that would trigger immediate attention. My mouth went dry. Like my body knew before my mind finished the sentence, someone did this on purpose. I walked back into Mom's room and just looked at her. She was asleep, the bedside lamp off, the overhead light too bright, the monitor steady and indifferent. Her hand lay on the blanket like it belonged to somebody else. There was no universe where my mother, unable to walk unassisted, struggling to speak, had been driving to a bank and taking cash out in repeated trips. I called Vanessa from the hallway. She answered cheerful, like we were about to talk about lunch. Hey, how's mom? I skipped the greeting. Vanessa, what happened to the emergency account? There was a pause, but it wasn't confusion. It was calculation. Oh, she said lightly. That? I used it. I gripped my phone hard enough my fingers hurt. You used all of it. I didn't waste it, she said quickly. I invested it. For my boutique. And mom wanted me to. She said I could. My eyes went to the glass doors at the end of the hall, where the sky was fading into that gray-blue hospital hour. When did she say that? Before, Vanessa said. Before all this. You know Mom? She's always wanted to help me. I felt heat rise in my face. Mom can't speak right now. She can barely move her hand. You're telling me she agreed to empty her emergency account, and then she had another stroke. Vanessa exhaled like I was being unreasonable. Michelle, don't make me the villain because you're stressed. It was Mom's money. And she said yes. I could have yelled. I could have cried. Instead, my voice went quiet and sharp. How much did you take? Why does it matter? She snapped. It's family. It matters, I said, because Mom is in a hospital bed and those withdrawals happened after she was admitted. Another pause. Then Vanessa softened her tone into that fake patience she used when she wanted to sound like the adult in the room. We'll talk when you're not spiraling. And she hung up. I stood in the hallway, listening to a cart squeak by, and something clicked into place. Vanessa wasn't scared. She didn't sound cornered. She sounded like she'd rehearsed this. That night I called Eric. I told him what I'd found, and I waited for him to say, "That's insane. That can't be right. We're fixing this." Instead he said, "Vanessa told me Mom gave her permission." My stomach dropped, but this time it wasn't shock, it was the realization that I was going to be fighting on two fronts. Eric. Mom can't consent to anything right now without us explaining it 3 times. He sighed like I was interrupting his evening. Maybe she said yes before. You can't prove she didn't. That sentence landed like a slap. Not because it was smart, but because it revealed the family rule. The person who causes the harm gets the benefit of the doubt, and the person who reacts gets labeled difficult. I went back into Mom's room and sat down beside her bed. The monitor beeped. The light hummed. My badge clicked again when I adjusted in the chair. And I made myself a promise I didn't say out loud. If nobody else was going to protect her, I was. The next morning, I didn't call Vanessa. I called the bank and asked for their fraud department. I kept my voice calm on purpose. I'd learned the hard way that if a woman sounds emotional, people treat her like she's exaggerating. The investigator asked practical questions. Who was on the account? How were the withdrawals made? Could my mother physically get to a branch or ATM during the time they happened? No, I said. She's been hospitalized. She can't walk. She can barely speak. She can't sign new paperwork. There was typing on the other end. All right, she said. We can pull transaction records and see how these were executed. I expected it to take forever. It didn't. A day later she called back and asked, "Has your sister been the only person visiting regularly?" My skin went cold. She's visited, yes. Because the withdrawals are in person, the investigator said. ATM and counter. And they're all after the hospitalization began. My hand tightened on the edge of my kitchen counter. My laptop was open beside me with client work. My daughter's homework papers were spread out like normal life still expected me to function. So it wasn't online, I said. No. And while joint account access makes the bank's options limited, the timing combined with medical incapacity can be a serious issue. A serious issue like what? I asked, even though I already knew. She paused, then said, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I ended the call and just stood there, staring at my sink, like if I looked away the situation might disappear. Tom came home later, took one look at my face, and didn't ask for a long explanation. Tell me, he said. I did. He listened without interrupting, jaw tight, hands still. When I finished, he said, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to do it right," I told him. No screaming. No family group chat wars. I'm documenting. I'm locking things down. Vanessa tried to get ahead of me anyway. She texted the family group chat first, just so everyone knows. I used Mom's emergency account with her blessing. Michelle is under a lot of stress and misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. Like, I'd imagine the empty account. Eric replied with a thumbs up. An actual thumbs up. Then Vanessa messaged me privately. Please don't make this ugly. Mom would hate that. It was such a neat little trick. Do the ugliest thing, then accuse the person responding of making it ugly. I didn't reply. I opened my laptop and started building what I called my kitchen table file. I made folders with plain names, bank statements, hospital capacity, Vanessa messages, call logs. I took screenshots. I downloaded PDFs. I saved emails. I wrote dates and times on a yellow legal pad because I didn't trust my memory under stress. I printed everything too. The printer jammed and I almost lost it over a wad of paper, which felt humiliating until I remembered I hadn't slept properly in days. I unjammed it, smudged ink on my thumb, and kept going. I highlighted dates until the marker started to dry. Then I got another call, this time from the hospital. A social worker said, "Your sister asked to be listed as the primary contact for billing and discharge planning." That was the moment I understood Vanessa's real play. It wasn't only taking money. It was taking control. If she controlled contact information, she could intercept calls, shape narratives, and make herself look like the responsible one. I kept my voice polite. Please document that I'm the primary caregiver and primary contact. No changes without my written confirmation. Okay, she said. We can do that. I immediately followed up with an email so it existed in writing. I'd stopped trusting verbal anything. That same day, I contacted an elder law attorney. I chose someone local because I wanted an office I could physically walk into if I needed to. When the receptionist asked what the issue was, I said, potential exploitation of an incapacitated adult. Saying it out loud made my throat tighten, but it also made it real and actionable. The attorney didn't react with shock. She reacted with structure. She asked about capacity, existing powers of attorney, and account access. When I told her the withdrawals were after hospitalization, she nodded. We can file for emergency guardianship over finances, she said. Given her medical status, the court can move quickly. I stared at my calendar like the days were enemies. How quickly? Usually within about a week, she said. Faster if your documentation is strong. My documentation was strong because I'd been forced to become the kind of person who keeps receipts to survive. Getting medical statements about capacity was its own nightmare. Doctors were busy. Nurses changed shifts. Everyone was kind, but kindness doesn't fill out forms. I kept showing up, calmly persistent, repeating, I need written confirmation about her ability to manage financial decisions. One doctor finally said, "You're doing the right thing," and I had to blink hard because I was so tired I couldn't tell if I wanted to cry or scream. When we filed the emergency petition, I walked into the attorney's office with a binder that was too full and a coffee that had gone cold. She flipped through my printed statements, my call logs, my saved texts. This is exactly what the court needs, she said. Dates. Proof. Capacity. A few days later, the court granted emergency guardianship over my mother's finances. No drama. No speech. Just an order, stamped, signed, and powerful in a way feelings never are. My attorney said, next step is a demand letter. A letter, I repeated, like I couldn't believe paper could stand up to what felt like a family earthquake. A letter, she confirmed. With evidence attached. A deadline. And consequences if it's not resolved. Vanessa called me the same day she got it. You got a lawyer, she said, voice tight. I did, I said. You're really doing this, she snapped. To your own sister. I'm doing it for Mom, I said. You took the money after she was hospitalized. Vanessa scoffed. It was her money. It was her safety net, I said. And she couldn't consent. You know that. Then she tried the pivot I'd known my whole life. You've always resented that Mom believes in me. There it was, the attempt to make this about my personality instead of her actions. I'm not discussing this without attorneys, I said. If you want to respond, respond to the letter. She made a small, shaky laugh. You're making it ugly. No, I said, and my voice stayed level. I'm making it documented. Vanessa hired an attorney. That alone told me she knew she couldn't charm her way out of this. If she truly believed she'd done nothing wrong, she'd be posting inspirational quotes about family forgiveness, not paying for legal defense. A conference call was scheduled. I sat at my dining table with my binder open and my hands wrapped around a mug I didn't drink from. My daughter was in her room with music low, like she understood more than she let on. Tom sat nearby, not hovering, just present. On the call, my attorney kept everything simple. The withdrawals happened after hospitalization, my mother lacked capacity, and the bank had verified who physically made them. That was the moment the thing I'd been hinting at finally landed with full weight. It wasn't just suspicious timing. There was proof of who showed up and did it. Vanessa went quiet. Her attorney cleared his throat and asked for a short pause. When they came back, his tone had changed, less defensive, more practical. He said, "My client is prepared to return funds." Not, "My client did nothing wrong." Not, "We'll fight." Return. Within days, the account showed a large return deposit, $71,000. I stared at the number with my heart pounding, not relieved, not triumphant, just stunned that paper could force reality back into place. Tom asked quietly, "Is it all of it?" "No," I said. My voice sounded far away to me. "Some of it's already gone." The rest wasn't recovered through a dramatic showdown. It was recovered the way most adult consequences happen: filings, deadlines, and a civil judgment that followed her like gravity until the remainder was paid back over time. I closed the joint account. I opened new accounts under guardianship with strict access controls. No shared logins, no emergency arrangements that relied on trust instead of safeguards. I also updated medical records everywhere Mom received care, only me and Tom as contacts, no changes without written approval. Vanessa tried to show up once like nothing had happened, smiling, bringing pastries, asking the nurse questions with that bright voice. The nurse looked at the chart, then looked at me, waiting. I said calmly, "No changes. No new contacts. No paperwork without me." Vanessa's smile flattened. For a second, I saw something flash across her face: annoyance, fear, embarrassment. Then she gathered herself and left, heels clicking down the hall like she was the one who'd been wronged. A couple months later, we had a family dinner at Eric's house. Nothing dramatic. Just plates, small talk, the warm overhead light, the clink of utensils. Vanessa sat across from me and kept her eyes on her food like it might protect her. Eric made a comment about how this has been hard for everyone, and I felt that familiar pressure to smooth it over, to make it comfortable so no one had to sit with discomfort. I put my fork down. The sound was small, but it silenced the table anyway. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list every betrayal. I just said, "This isn't a debate anymore." The records were clear, the court was clear, and Mom's safety is not a family opinion. Vanessa stared at her napkin. Eric's face tightened. I added, still calm, "Protecting someone vulnerable isn't optional. It's what love looks like when it has to be real." No one argued. Not because they suddenly agreed with me, but because there was nothing left to spin. Facts don't care who the family's favorite is. Life eventually got quieter again. Weeks turned into a routine: client deadlines, therapy schedules, medication refills, my daughter's school issues, Tom's early mornings. Mom had good days and bad days. Some mornings she'd squeeze my hand and look at me like she wanted to say something she couldn't reach. One evening, while I helped her eat, she tapped the table twice, then pointed at herself, then at me. Her eyes filled up. It wasn't a sentence, but it was enough. "I know, Mom," I whispered. "I've got you." That's the part people don't talk about when they say, "But it's family." Sometimes family is exactly why you have to put things in writing. Sometimes love is a locked door and a paper trail, not a conversation and a promise. And I learned something that changed me: boundaries aren't punishments. They're protection, especially when the person you're protecting can't protect themselves. If this resonated with you, share your story in the comments and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next.